Hey, it's Matt, your average gamer, and this is my take and my build for the Rivers of Blood. So recently I've gotten some comments, including some other things on other social media, that asked me whether or not the Rivers of Blood is still viable in PvE. Now, this video is for the purpose of PvE and not really PvP, as we're not talking about that aspect at this time. So, the Sword of Night and Flame was an example of a major nerf back when the game came out, and it kind of made the weapon irrelevant even for PvE, given the long casting time, the limited range, and the fact that it was nerfed to oblivion. For the Rivers of Blood, though, it didn't suffer quite the same. It actually did okay. The nerf was completely reasonable, and it kept the weapon incredibly relevant. You get the Rivers of Blood at the Church of Repose in Mountaintops of the Giants. This is where it is on the map here. And right next to it, I wanted to show this real quick. There's actually an ancient dragon smithing stone in this skull here. If you happen to miss this, this is one of the first ones that you can get in the game. In Mountaintops of the Giants, you just go inside this skull and you can grab the ancient dragon smithing stone right here next to the church after you defeat Okina. So for the Gods Can Do, I wanted to show off a couple different buffs with the Rivers of Blood to kind of show you guys that it's still very good and answer that question. I'm going to show you my setup in a second, and I do get hit here a few times, but as you can see, massive damage, including the fire and the bleed damage. It does really well. This is on Journey 6, by the way, so the amount of damage that they're taking is substantial given the fact that they have close to 40,000 health now combined, and I'm still doing a ton of damage. The nerf for Rivers of Blood really did apply to PvP mainly, and for PvE, obviously it procs bleed a little slower now, but it doesn't matter. The weapon art is still fantastic. It's still an awesome weapon art that benefits from a lot of things and is very buffable in my opinion. And Flame Grant Me Strength, which boosts both fire attack and physical damage, is one of the most perfect things that you could use for the Rivers of Blood because it fits it very well, given that it's fire and physical damage. I like to cast Golden Vow as well, and for the purpose of this video, I was poison procking a little bit to get some extra damage, but you don't have to do that. I'm going to explain that in a second. And as you can tell, I'm fighting the tougher Draconic Tree Sentinel here on Journey 6. He's got a fair bit of HP. He does hit me a few times and whatnot, but overall, he goes down because the Rivers of Blood is still a very good weapon. And honestly, it has a really cool weapon art. It's always been a cool weapon. It was just overpowered and a lot of people used it. And still to this day, a lot of people probably do. And for good reason. Like I said, it's still very good. So we're using the Rivers of Blood plus 10, a Weightless Seal, the Mushroom Crown, the Rotten Wing Insignia, Lord of Bloods, Shard of Alexander, and then we have the Poison proc, and you can switch that out to the Ritual Swords Talisman or Millicent's Prosthesis if you're not doing the Poison procs. And then we have the Fire and the Successive or Consecutive Attack Tear. And here are my stats at 150. This is what I did for my Rivers of Blood build. I did 40 Dex and 60 Arcane. I was able to soft cap Arcane. If you're going above 150, you can go 80 Dex and 80 Arcane for the maximum amount of damage, and it will show. This is like I said, it's a very powerful weapon. It still is a very powerful weapon post-nerf. They nerfed it, but again, it's not anything like the Sword of Night and Flame was back in the day. It doesn't even compare to that level of nerf. It's been nerfed, but not that much. Honestly, as you can tell with regular NPC invaders here, it does proc bleed slower than it used to on the weapon art and whatnot, but it still does massive damage, and it makes quick work of pretty much everyone. Not too hard there, as we're doing different quest lines. That was the end, I believe, of Volcano Manor there. So I went to Gatefront just to see how it did at mob control, and it's still a fantastic mob control weapon. Don't mind me getting poked here. It clears out enemies very quickly and is extremely useful in those tight situations where a lot of enemies are attacking you, because you can just spam the weapon art. And honestly, yes, it is a very mindless weapon art, but it can be fun for the purposes of PvE. And since this video is advocating for it for PvE, I think there's no issue with that. In terms of PvE, you should be able to use whatever weapon you choose or whatever weapon you like, and don't worry about anything else. As far as PvP goes, obviously duels and things like that have their own sets of rules, and I think people should follow them to the extent in which they want to keep the game interesting. With that being said, thanks for watching, and be sure to sub.